My name is Maureen Burns, in case I haven't met any of you, and if I haven't met any of you, I'd like to meet you, so please see me after the presentation. Welcome to the TalTech Luncheon. The TalTech Alliance is a 501c3 not-for-profit alliance of businesses, academic centers, entrepreneurs, and individuals invested in promoting technology-based entrepreneurship, business expansion, and innovation in the capital region. We continuously seek to expand our businesses and promote innovation in order to strengthen our region's business community. We are also the technology roundtable for the Tallahassee-Leon County Economic Development Council. The EDC is a public-private partnership between the City of Tallahassee, Leon County, and private investors who are committed to establishing a competitive business climate resulting in job creation. Before we get started with today's program, does anybody have any initiatives that they'd like to talk about? Any members have news that you want to discuss? Yes, ma'am. This is Carl Palmer, one of our board members.
Hi, everyone. You already know my song and dance. It's about Startup Quest. So I'm with Career Source Capital Region. But I did want to let you all know, or thank TalTech for all their support of Startup Quest. We are currently going into our final cohort, and we have about 80 that are being trained in the program, and we've got some cool mentors who have assembled their teams, and now we will have our final investor pitch in October 8th. And we're actually looking for a few judges to read business plans and be there at the investor pitch to score teams and provide feedback. If you're interested in that, please see me. We're also looking for sponsors for that, so we can make it great. So see me if you want to do that. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir. Alvin?
My name is Alan Price. I'm with the Career Source Capital Region as well, and we have similar initiatives that we're working on in the month of September that's coming up. And I'm looking for employee partners that can assist our long-term employees getting back to work. The great thing about that program is your employee partners can be reimbursed up to 75% of that person's salary for a on-the-job training opportunity. So basically, I'll be focusing on science, technology, and that arena, and that is why I'm here to find out who everyone is and find out what wants to promote that program. So if anybody's interested in that, please let me know. I'll be here. Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I have one announcement. There's going to be a Women in Technology Happy Hour next Tuesday from 5:30 to 6:30 at the Wine Mall.
Is that only for women?
Yes, sir.
That's a good one to go to. If I dress the part,
Yes, you may come if you dress the part. And there will be pictures taken.
Hi, I'm Caitlin.
Moving on. I'd also like to announce that the LinkedIn group for TalTech has owners now that can accept invitations and open discussions. So if you haven't linked in with our TalTech group, please consider it. We're very excited. It's going to be a great social media platform for us. And if you have any suggestions, please let me know, or Rick Oppenheim, our new LinkedIn owner. When's happy hour again? 5:30 to 6:30 next Tuesday. Where? At the Wine Hall. And it's our first one, so we're going to have at least 2 more this year. Okay, and now on to our presentation. I'd like to make introductions. It's these gentlemen up here at the table. Our first presenter is Mr. Larry Altman, the founder of Intact Partners, a cloud computing expert and previous CIO for the Florida Department of State. He is a C-level management leader with empirical experience creating value for companies or government. Larry is a forward-thinking technology visionary and plans to discuss cloud strategies, Azure, Windows 10, and other Microsoft leading technologies. We have Chris Dietz, Chris is the founder of Dietz Consulting and Technology Grows. He is a business and technology consultant with 21 years of experience architecting and building large enterprise-scale software solutions. He has been in the front lines of technology innovation in state government since 1997. Chris will be discussing business architecture, technical architecture, and agile strategies for modernizing the enterprise. Mr. Glenn Hallam is client partner with Intact Partners and has a PhD in industrial organizational psychology. A serial entrepreneur and former research scientist with the Center for Creative Leadership, he is co-author with Larry of the App Inventory, a tool for assessing the sustainability, security, cloudability, and cost-effectiveness of applications. He will be discussing how leaders create the future by casting a viable vision and by aligning resources to achieve their vision. And last but not least, Mr. William McCluskey is the founder and CEO of Copper Channel. He has an MBA in Product and Brand Management from Boston College and a BS in Civil Engineering from FAMU FSU College of Engineering. William has focused his career on increasing business performance through developing a culture of learning and collaboration. Thank you, gentlemen.
Hello. So what I think the forum today is we're going to all give a quick little talk. It's going to be very informal. Feel free to stop us at any time, ask questions if you want to, but we're going to do a little presentation, and at the end we're going to open up for panel discussion. There's probably a lot of questions and or discussions that can take place. So with that note, I'm going to go ahead and proceed by telling a little story. So I'm going to take my glasses off for this. A group of scientists, I got to read it because otherwise I may miss it up. A group of scientists placed 5 monkeys into a cage. And in the middle was a ladder, and on the top of the ladder was some bananas. Every time a monkey went up the ladder, the scientists soaked the rest of the monkeys with cold water. All right, after a while, every time a monkey went up the ladder, the other monkeys jumped on the monkey and beat him up, whoever tried to go up the ladder. Scientists then substituted one of the monkeys. The first thing the new monkey did was try to go up the ladder. And the other monkeys jumped on him and beat him up. One by one, all of the monkeys were substituted for new monkeys. Each time someone tried to go up the ladder, a beating would occur. Eventually, all the original monkeys were gone, and even though no one had ever received a cold shower, they continued to beat up anyone who tried to go up the ladder. So if it were possible to ask the monkeys, why would someone take a beating by going up the ladder, I bet they would say, I don't know, that's the way things are done around here. That's the way we've always done it. So does that sound familiar? The truth of the matter is, no matter the reason, and there are many, change can be very difficult. As we evolve into a society, our world is changing at an increasing rapid pace. We as individuals and organizations must learn to change our thinking and our attitude, and we must adjust to an ever-changing state of this world. The bottom line is that we're always applying modernization to the enterprise. The key is to set yourself up for future success by putting the enterprise into a continual state of modernization. So our panel discussion is going to be all geared towards that. So I'm going to get into my presentation about what is enterprise modernization. Well, it's not a new concept. It's not clearly defined. If you Google it, there is no definition for enterprise modernization. I'm voting that we start one today. It's not solely focused on technology, and it's not a 4-letter word. What it is it's a paradigm. It's an abstract and concrete at the same time. It's doing more with less. It's process-oriented. It's service-oriented. It's purpose-driven. It's performance-driven. It's innovation-driven. It's agile and responsive while being careful and articulate. It provides a continual state of improvement and adaptation. It does involve all facets of an organization. So here's our new founded definition, which we're going to try to get put up on Wikipedia. I don't know, maybe you guys can have some input. Organizing, first of all, it's a verb. Organizing, transforming, upgrading an organization and all of its components and resources, all of its data and information to respond and adapt to change using organizational psychology, modern methodologies and design patterns, leading edge technologies, and a lot of old-fashioned elbow grease. So change is not easy, change is very difficult. So what are some of the challenges organizations may face? I've polled some of the people that I work with. I've been working as a contractor in state government for a very long time, and I've worked in outside government for a long time as well. And inevitably, when you talk to the CIO or stakeholders or managers, the very first thing they'll tell you is time and money. That's the biggest problem they face. So I have a note there as reported, because that's the first thing that everyone says. As you will see in the course of our presentation, that we believe that that's not always an accurate statement, and that while time and money are issues, they're not the single barrier to modernizing the enterprise. And I think as we end up with Mr. Hallam down there, you'll see why. So bureaucracy, red tape, newer changing regulations, lack of leadership, maintaining status quo, lack of learning skills and improvement programs, lack of knowledge management, lack of understanding complex business models. As our society changes nowadays, the business models are growing more and more complex, and we have to learn how to deal with that. Understanding that technology is only part of the concern. Outdated or obsolete technologies and applications, outdated or obsolete infrastructure, software solutions that aren't. The issue here is a solution becomes obsolete a few months from now. And those of you that have ever worked in an environment where you've worked on old banking systems or old mainframe systems that are built back in the 90s, we had figured out a way through modernization efforts over the years to put something pretty on the front of it, but behind the scenes it's still using those old technologies, which works great. And Larry's actually going to be talking about some of that stuff as well in a few minutes. So what are some strategies organizations must embrace to drive to success? So I won't read all of this verbatim, but you have to change the way you think. You have to embrace change. Changing the culture to be one of continuous learning and self-improvement. I'm an IT professional that got a degree in finance and accounting. I've taught myself technology, and one of the things I love about this field is that it constantly requires me to stay on the learning curve. I enjoy that. I can still have meaningful conversations with young students who are just graduating college and going to work for Microsoft or building wearable computers. It allows me to keep those conversations intelligent and insightful. We have to change the culture we have to change the way we recruit and hire and train our most valuable resources, our people. We do interviewing, mock interviewing at FSU, helping students prepare for real interviews. And I've also attended lots of organizational interviews through the state, and they're vastly different. The way we recruit and train and hire people needs to change. And the next point is key to that as well, which is we need to change the way we pay our salaries to be competitive in the industry. In some of the state agencies that I work at, one of the biggest struggles that they have is not finding the right talent, not keeping the right talent. One of the big factors there is how much they pay. So changing the way we do business to be purpose-oriented and performance-driven and client-centric. Changing the way we design our business models to be based on behavior and process optimization. Change the organization to align all common business components to reduce redundancy. Changing the way we understand, communicate, and approach the business problem. Changing the way we design, develop, and implement solutions to the business problem by using modern technologies, modern design patterns, and architectures and infrastructure. So, without getting too terribly technical, I just wanted to mention some technical components of a modern architecture. So scalability, all the abilities, scalability, security, reliability, maintainability, accessibility. So we need to be building solutions that meet all that criteria right from the start. Methodologies in development, you've seen these terms: agile, scrum, rapid, dynamic, extreme, feature-driven, lean, waterfall, etc. The truth of the matter is that I've rarely been on a large enterprise project where I haven't used something from each one of these methodologies. There's no silver bullet. There's no one methodology that's going to be exactly right all of the time, because what you find is that every solution, every problem is different, therefore every solution is different. Concepts like domain-driven design, focusing on the core business domain, model-driven design, modeling that domain, behavior-driven design, focusing on the behavior and how the users interact with it, test-driven development. So in architecture terms, some of you who might be in the technical field might have heard the term in-tier, which has been the classical or traditional form of architecture. The onion architecture offers a completely different way of architecting a solution, and it's loosely coupled components. So the concept there is that you can modernize something by bringing all of your technologies up to the current, and then 3 months later, something's new. So in this architecture, it actually allows you to unplug and plug something back in without rebuilding the entire system. Command query responsibility separation, CQRS, event sourcing, web API, web services, cloud storage, database, NoSQL, table storage, big data analytics, hyper reporting, mobile strategies in native and hybrid. So these are just some terms. When you're back at the office and you hear someone talk about domain-driven design, you have some kind of an idea of what we're talking about. And the primary task of an enterprise modernization is to build a culture and a platform of innovation. And the key is design a system of adaptation and continual improvement where the enterprise will always be modernized. You won't have to go through and spend millions of dollars every 5 years to rebuild everything, because you're systematically rebuilding it as you go. And so on that note, I'm going to wrap up my talk and hand it over to Larry.
Chris, here, and I see some folks that have the same color hair that I do, and this is my table, by the way. I would rather sit with these guys than all the others that have this color hair, for a lot of reasons. They think different. Now, we used to think that way, but they think different now. And I would rather sit at their table and learn their thought patterns. Forget mine. We've already been there, done that. So today, I could talk about cloud computing. Anybody knows how to define that, let me know. I could talk about cloud computing for the next week, but I want to give you one statistic that I think is valuable immediately, and that is that 90% of all the business that we do in technology has been done the same way that we've been doing it. 90%. The interesting fact of that is that 10% is not. 10% in the last 3 years has gone from zero, basically, to 10% of everything that you do is being done in the cloud in some way. And I'm going to show you a little presentation that I did for Secretary Browning when I came in as the CIO of the United States. We set it up a little bit. In 2012, we had a presidential election, you might recall. And in 2008, we also had one of those. So in 2008, the Secretary calls and says, come help us fix the Florida voter registration system. So I said, okay, I'll take a look. So I went over, spent a week or so looking at the code, looking at the system, and said, there's no way under the sun I'm going to be able to fix this thing. So I didn't. I decided not to work on it in 2008. And, Florida seems to end up on the news. And having trucks with the big dish things outside the Capitol building and all that. Well, around 1st of June in 2011, Secretary refrigeration system. I knew good and well that I couldn't do it with the old way. There was no way under the sun that I was going to pull that off. But, you know, I talked to my wife, I said, hey, you know, we're kind of financially able to take some time off and commit suicide. So, from a technical standpoint. So, and I, like probably a lot of you, have fussed about the government more than once. And why can't they do something like the rest of us in the business world out here? So I took a large cut in pay and became a servant of the state as an employee. And so I had to tell Secretary Browning, which, by the way, I think is a very dynamic leader. He is a guy that had my back the whole time, and I knew it. And he made it possible for us to have success. So leadership in this thing is totally critical, but I had to sell it. So I came up with this idea here of moving some sand. So I went into Secretary Browning's office and I said, here's your problem. You've got this large pile of sand. And, you know, it's getting bigger all the time. And that sand is in Miami, and of course, you know, Tallahassee, 9 hours or so, you're doing good to get there. And the problem is that we want this sand in Tallahassee and the pile is in Miami. And so I said, well, you know, call in the IT guys and this is what you're going to get, you know. No problem. How many times you've heard that? No problem. The IT guys should jump right in there. We got it. So we put on our headsets and we get out our laptops and whatever else and we put things on the screen and we huddle and we consider the options. Here's one. This guy's definitely built for moving sand and all that kind of stuff. But it's designed to do that. The trouble is, sand's in Miami and we need it in Tallahassee. And you know, I could get it there, but it'd take a while. Probably the election would be over by the time I got around to being able to move the sand. So, you know, there's this big super airplane out there and it moves stuff real fast. Costs a lot. Has to schedule that guy to get the sand into the plane and get it off the plane. And not exactly designed for doing that job. Can you imagine the sand itself working its way and all the inner workings of that plane, what would be left after we got through moving the sand? But we could get it there with that sand and we get it there fast. Now, not a way, bad way. Everybody agree? We move sand with that guy. Truth is, we've been moving sand with that guy for the last 50, 60 years. We've been moving sand the same old way that we've always moved sand. And it's tried and it's true and it works. But it takes a lot of support. You've got to have diesel fuel, you've got to have drivers, you've got to have a whole fleet of them to move that sand. And Secretary Browning was considering that thing, and I said, well, we've just got to do it differently. There's got to be a different way to pull this off. And so, put that sand on Craigslist and sell it and get some new sand, for heaven's sake. Why not? So, do we need the same old sand? Do we need to do it the same old way? Can we actually open up the box and decide to do something different? And that takes real leadership and real commitment. Now, it's a technical problem, sure. But we can solve that because it's only technology. It is getting somebody who has our back, who's all the way up and down the chain, who has real leadership and real understanding that if they empower people, we'll get some stuff done. So I presented that to Secretary Browning, and this came down on the table. He said, you know, I'm going to move that sand. And that's the way we think about it. If I can get my quote back up here. There are a couple of books that I've read recently that I would recommend. One of them is the New Economy Handbook, Hall and Con 2002. It's got some great stuff in it. The other is a book that goes way back to 1975. It's in its 21st edition, I believe. Dr. Frederick Brooks, The Mythical Man Month. If you haven't read those books, you ought to if you're a technology person. even if you're a young technology person. But the most important thing to observe about this kind of decision is that at any point in time, the choice being made is not a choice between adopting or not adopting, but a choice between adopting now or deferring the decision until later. That's where you are. Wait.
I don't know how much you guys should listen to me. I managed to break my toe playing with a dog, so that shows my level of expertise. But what we're going to talk about today is everyone up here is saying that change is happening faster and faster and faster, and it's absolutely true. So how do we accommodate for this? Chris had a great point. We have to design systems to actually build in modernization, just make it part of our initial process. And Peter Senge had a great book, it's The Fifth Discipline, and it was all about creating a culture of learning. Make it real easy to get the information from one person to another. Stop reinventing the wheel and get the information to the people who are making the decisions. Make things move faster, give people the authority and the power to change things that are just out of date and slowing everyone down. Who here knows something that's a terrible idea that they have to do every day in their business? There we go. Someone's being honest. There we go. You know it's a terrible idea, but you don't have the power to say, hey guys, let's stop doing this. And that's where the big first change happens. It's in the culture. And anyone who knows me knew I'd be slipping in a flowchart in here somewhere. I'm a big fan of workflows, documentation, and that's exactly what we're going to cover today. How to actually install and make a culture of this knowledge transfer. Documentation, transparency, communication, and empowerment. So first thing, document. How are people supposed to learn and share ideas if, oh, I worked on a project just like that 3 months ago. Well, do you have any notes? Do you have your work? Well, no, I've got it all in my head. Well, even if you have it in your head and you have a perfect memory, now that means that you've just dedicated your next 3 months to working on the same thing you did before, because the person who's tasked with it today doesn't have access to that information without you being physically present. And we've got all sorts of great technology. Right now we're recording this meeting so people can go back and review it later. You have all sorts of online storage documents, wikis, collaborative, shared folders, all these things. Use them. Data is cheap right now. I just bought a terabyte storage system for less than $100. It was a good deal. But that data, that power is out there. You have all sorts of free tools too. YouTube is wonderful. Record your meetings so your people can go back to them. You can post them privately and give people access to the information whenever they need it. If you don't document it, you've lost it. And with, I think there's a statistic out today that shows that people, the millennial generation, they usually change jobs about every 18 months. That means every 18 months you are losing all of that training, all of that development, all of that expertise and talent. At least document the work. So that leads into transparency and communication. So you've documented all this stuff, but how do they get to it? If it's living on a hard drive in your computer, how does your coworker get access to that without it being public? So build share folders, build informations and structures where people can get this information without you being a bottleneck. Free up the information, make it the company's knowledge base, and suddenly let people have access to it. And when you give people access to information, they make better decisions and they perform better and faster. And that saves your organization tons of money and makes your customers so much happier. And transparency and communication go one-on-one. Anyone who's been in a long-term relationship, you know that a lot of good communication goes not only from running your mouth, but also listening. But it's also about being honest. Whether or not it's good news doesn't really matter. It's more important to give them an accurate, true representation of what's going on, and it's exactly the same thing at a business level. Any organization, just like what Larry was saying, it's more important to have a real idea of the state, because otherwise you're just putting it off. You can't keep on putting off the bad news, because then it turns into this absolute crisis and a nightmare. I'd rather tackle it day one when it's a small, little problem. And then empowerment. Just like what Chris was saying, well, we've done it this way 1,000,000 times, so let's keep on beating up the guys going for the prize. Well, empower your employees. We saw a lot of people raise their hands when I asked, who knows of a solution to a problem that they have to go through every single day. Well, why does your higher up not allow you to do that? They're paying you tons of great money for all of your great ideas and your great work. They should be able to trust you to make good decisions. So you have to be a little bit flexible. And that takes great leadership. And Glenn will lead us into this one.
What I'm trying to focus on is this notion of the role leaders can play in modernizing an enterprise. And let me go back to this next slide here. Oh, okay. I've had a chance over the years to study leadership. I worked for an organization that did leadership training. We put about 20,000 execs to our programs every year all over the world. And I've had a chance to kind of consult in that area and get to know the kind of experts around the world who were talking about what great leaders do, blah, blah, blah. When I was in my early 30s, I was tired of being in a regular job, and I had the entrepreneurial bug. And I went out and I started a company, and I was hiring programmers and working mostly in building technology. And I've had a chance to do that twice now over the course of my career. So I've had a chance to kind of study it and talk to experts about this stuff, and also be out there actually trying to do this, where I'm sort of trying to build things that are of use to my clients, basically, and try to build a business. Several different ways that I could approach it, this notion of being a leader of technology. I'm interested in how leaders span the boundary between users and the technology. I think fundamentally the best technology leaders are the ones who actually understand who they're trying to serve with their technology, in terms of understanding the needs of the business, understanding the needs of the users, while at the same time understanding the language of technology, being able to work with the programmers to develop things. So I think one way to think about a great leader is that they can span that boundary of basically users in the business versus the technology. But I don't want to go there today. Another way to think about it is in terms of how, especially in government agencies and some larger organizations, how we can begin to employ practices from startups to think about how to kind of revolutionize what we're doing. This notion of trying to fail fast and iterate is very foreign, I think, in most government situations, but I think it's really important to be able to create an environment in which people are encouraged to experiment and to potentially fail, but to be learning as we go. And I think there's been some talk about that here today. It's another, I think, very constructive direction to go in terms of thinking about how we can rethink how we're building technology. But what I thought would be most useful today, in the couple of minutes I have here, is to just give you a very, very simple definition of leadership that I have found to be very compelling. And I think has real relevance to leaders who are trying to change how things are done in their organizations. I remember hearing about Larry Altman a number of years ago and his role as a CIO with the Department of State. And one of the insights of one of the people that worked for them said, Larry had a real vision. He had a vision. He was one of the few people who actually had a vision that came here. I think that the best leaders are the ones who are essentially trying to create the future. And this could be in all facets. It could be people in the Silicon Valley who are trying to revolutionize how we think about information and ideas and relationships, what have you. It could be what you're doing in your own organization. But fundamentally, the best leaders are the ones who have a way to create the future. And one of the reasons that they can do this is that they have a vision for the future. Right? They can actually look at the future. They're not just here now, and this is something I have to a fault. I sort of live in this world, but where are we going in this operation, in this business, in this society, what have you? You know, what can I visualize? And most importantly, what can I visualize that's viable, right? So the best leaders are the ones who, like a lot of us can be way out there in terms of how we can visualize, but it's not the right time, okay? You have to have a vision that this is the right time. It would be compelling to other people. It would meet your needs. It would meet the needs of the business, etc. And that requires a lot of knowledge, for sure. To really know, for example, what technologies are available right now. Where are things going? And where's Microsoft going with what they're doing? And hey, are servers going to exist in the future? And blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of knowledge you have to be able to formulate a vision for the future that is viable. Either. Right? So this is why you want to have sometimes the smartest person as a leader in your organization. Not always the case, right? But being able to come up with a viable vision, I think, is fundamental to beginning to create a different future. basically. The next thing that a leader needs is the capacity to communicate that vision in a way that's compelling. So you have these people who might have terrific vision for where you can go with things, but they don't have these skills, on the other hand, that allow them to connect with people. And communicating in a compelling way means, how is this going to affect you and your life, okay? How's it going to affect your family? How's it going to affect this business? What is it going to look like in terms of my daily work? So my vision is we run everything in the cloud, and it means that we're able to do incredible testing. You know, you'd be able to test all this with a full-blown database, and you have really robust testing of this, and so when you go to actually launch this thing in production, you've actually tested it with data that you know. So the leader is able to be able to communicate these things in a way that really connects with you and the people around you, and you go like, no, I like that. I want to go there, right? Or in the case of a bigger business, to be able to communicate about this technology in such a way that you can talk about how it's going to affect the business. So this is how marketing can use this. You know, here's how our operation can actually use this. Here's what you can do that you can't do right now. The best leaders are the ones that don't just have a viable vision, but they have a way to go out and connect with people and say, this is how it's going to transform our lives. This is how it's going to change this business. You can communicate it in a way that's really gripping and viable. And finally, I'm going to make a couple points here. Pardon me if you're a Gators fan here, but I thought this might connect. You know, you just have to have the right resources around you, right? And I think a lot of people in your IT departments, for example, may not have the talents you need. You know, what I hear about going to the cloud is that it requires a different way of thinking about your programming. This notion of building loosely coupled, you know, applications is not something that's native to a lot of developers who are out there. So getting the right kind of talent lined up is huge. And when I think about trying to start a business, and something I love to do, I think about how can you get every player that you need. And I actually think what they do at FSU is kind of inspirational in terms of the extreme attention they put on every single position. And they want to have the very best person play that, and maybe 2 or 3 behind them, right? Well, if we thought about our IT departments in the same way, you know, we have the very best people in those disciplines that we need. I think that's something that our leaders need to be thinking about. If we're always having to modernize, if the technology is always changing, you know, then our definition of the skills we need is always kind of changing, and it requires an extreme emphasis on finding the very best people to do it. And sometimes we just don't have it, honestly. You can have a compelling vision, you can communicate in a way that people get, you know, but you just don't have the talent to get there. It's kind of multiplicative. If you got a 0 in there, you got a problem. You know, you have a 0 in talent, but if you don't have certain talents, you're just not going to get where you need to go with your vision. I think there's this whole idea of leaders catalyzing change. You know, that's one of the roles that they can play. And you may not see it a ton in government, but you do see it around the industry. This notion of being able to light a fire under people. There's some top leaders who will say, you know, in 5 years, we could be out of business. Let me provide a scenario for you for how we're going to be out of business in 5 years, all right? These guys do this, they do this, they do this, we're out of business, okay? That's an example of lighting a fire, and I've seen it happen with multi-billion-dollar organizations where they're coming out and really almost scaring people, right? Well, in the area of technology, I think there really are some major threats out there to you if you don't modernize, right? One of the things I've been working on recently is on a system and product with Larry Altman here actually, which is about evaluating applications. And our target market really is organizations that have at least 100 applications that they want to, you know, they might be developed, custom developed applications, you know, big outfits that need to get their arms around those applications and where the vulnerabilities are, basically. And we're trying to sort of focus on the CIO level where you're a new CIO, you try to get your arms around all this technology. What we're doing is actually we built metrics to be able to evaluate each of your applications along these dimensions: security, sustainability, cost effectiveness, etc. And I bring this up as an example because what we're trying to do is bring data to people to allow them to know where the threats are, right? What is the rationale for modernizing? Because I think this basically is the rationale. And what is the fire that's going to light underneath your operation to say, you know what, I have every reason to believe that this application in 5 years will not run. Okay, what's that going to do for your internal and external customers? That's an example of lighting fire on your organization. And I think sometimes that's what you have to be able to do in order to create a sense of like, no, we do need to change. You know, so you got a vision, you know, you have a way of communicating about it, but now you're beginning to sort of align your resources around that vision by lighting fire under people. And I would be thinking today, if there's one takeaway from my part of this is, you know, what is that fire that you could honestly light under the organization where you live, you know, where you work like that? What would motivate people to make a fundamental change in what they're doing and understand that, look, if the technology is changing, we need new skills, we need a new direction, well, we're in big trouble. So leaders are able to also align resources behind it. So very simple definition of leadership. You have a vision for the future that's viable, right? You can communicate it in ways that people get, and they understand it's compelling. You know, you have the resources you need, and which can take some time to build. Larry, for example, had to hire a bunch of people and train a bunch of people in what he did with the Department of State. And finally, you're able to align those resources towards your vision. That's it. Thank you.
It's open to you to ask us. This is a panel. And all right, I'll start over here with John. I guess.
All right, so, you know, modernization from state government sounds like a great idea. However, state government wants to always make sure that things are already tried and true before they jump on the newer technology. How do you, I guess, get the different entities within government to get on board and say, we do need to modernize, however, this system's already working and doing what we need to do. And a lot of times, you'll see within government that they're just adding additional responsibilities to a system so that they continue to get what they need, even though there's a lot of transactional processes that may not be, that may be manual. Yeah, that's an excellent question. Let me start it and then they can jump in. You know, first of all, what we're talking about is leading edge, not bleeding edge. Exactly. Technologies that are, the world is using them. So take the lean startups, for example. The lean startups being, anyone heard of MailChimp? Anyone heard of, you know, some of these other companies that are 2 and 3 and 4 years old that are doing all of these, you know, we call them modernization efforts, but to them, they're just startup efforts. So they're tried and true, but yeah, that's an excellent point because you have that boundary of straddling the old and migrating to the new, and that's why it really takes a serious strategy, and that strategy's got to come from the top, from the leadership, and it's got to filter down. You have to have buy-in, you have to have money, you have to have resources, but most importantly, you have to have a really good vision and a strategy for accomplishing that objective.
And to follow up on that, it's really what Larry was talking about. I've worked in a lot of projects where they want it, you know, they do what we call a checklist engineering or checklist project management. Oh, so-and-so has that, so we have to add that in. Oh, so-and-so has that, we need to add it in. That's using the dump truck or using, you know, the airliner. Find out what the real requirements are, and then as soon as you get the agreement of what the real purpose is of the job, then it's really easy to actually satisfy those requirements. And usually it is, like Chris was saying, it's something that's been around for 10 years. You can use a modern tool in a very old-fashioned way, and you can use an old-fashioned tool in a modern way. It has more to do with aligning, very much what Glenn was saying, aligning the resources to what the actual problem is.
In a practical sense, though, John, having been there, done that.
Yep.
When I look at these systems and assess those systems and see where they work, and I know I got to go to my leadership and get money, funding, whatever, even if that means going to the legislature, an LBR request, all of that kind of thing. The concept of moving them to a newer platform or a more modern platform so that I can break the problem down. The state doesn't buy normally, and a lot of companies too, I'm seeing this outside of government as well, where we used to go out and we bought CPU time, we bought storage, all in one big package. We spent maybe $1 million, $10 million, this, that, and the other, and we expected to have it for 8 to 15 years. Now, you don't buy it that way anymore. And the companies that we're dealing with, Microsoft, Oracle, SAP, Adobe, are all changing their business model to a service base. We sell you just what you need, when you need it. It's almost like the just-in-time inventory in manufacturing. So you've got to help the CIO or the director, or even a bureau chief, understand, and that might be in the business side. It might be a division or a plant manager or somebody of that nature who's responsible for a subset of the entire organism, and help them understand how they can break this project down into multiple pieces. What needs to go now? What needs to happen 6 months from now? And most organizations of any size already have a ton of data, and it's sitting in databases, and it's fractured like crazy, and it's going to sit there for quite some time. So how do we manage it and that kind of thing? So it's an involved process. There's no simple answer, but having been there, done that, that's how I approached it. To break the problem down into smaller pieces that are achievable, and in the government side here, in a fiscal year. You know, so
I'd like to add to that. How many of you actually work for an agency, either as a consultant or as an employee? Raise your hands. So not that many that actually work for the state. We've had a chance to talk to a number of the leaders, of technology at the state, and I think that they're kind of waiting for leadership to happen. They're waiting for somebody to say, do this. And the opportunity I see is that there are other states who are already out there. You know, in states, one of the first things they'll say is, who else is doing this right now? Well, you can point, for example, to California that has a very, from what I understand, pretty well-funded effort to go to the cloud. And I think that our state is going to be going there at some point. We just need for the leaders to stand up and say, this is where we're going.
Dale?
My question is more, you talk a lot about leadership and vision. How do you get there? What's your answer to society? Why don't we have more leaders who know what a vision is? We have that problem, I think, at the national level. You're people running for office where you don't hear anything about this.
Yeah.
You just down into the thing about immigration or pick your topic. But why in our organization? I mean, I worked in state government for 15 years. I was fortunate to work similar to what we talked about. Somebody ought to have decent leaders, but it's 90-10. It's maybe 5 or 10% that have leadership, that know what a vision is, and 90% that are stuck in mediocrity. Why don't we have more? Where does leadership come from? Where did that vision? I've been through it, I've seen it. Why don't we have more leaders with vision? Why are they just satisfied with sitting there and doing very well?
Yeah, and change doesn't happen soon. Those leaders don't learn leadership. They're going to be overcome by the new wave of technologists and innovators, and the talent that's coming out of FSU right now is insane. In all of my life, I've never seen this much talent coming out of the school. And yeah, the organizations that don't change their ways and change their thinking and change their leadership, they're going to die off.
I'm going to answer that. Just for me, a simple answer is the world is complex, okay? And whether you're leading at the national level or you're trying to lead in new technology, there's just so much to know, and there's so many problems, and there's so much history, and it's very easy to get bogged down in the negative and what you can't do, as opposed to being somebody who's willing to free themselves from the past and take a risk and say, here's my vision for what is possible. All right, you help me make this happen. I'm not sure how to make this happen, but here's my vision for what's possible. But I think we tend to look at the negative. We tend to get frustrated by the challenges that we've experienced in the past, and we tend to look back more than looking forward.
Human nature, we're very fear adverse. There's lots of data that shows you should go for an onside kick every single time. You should always go for 2 points. You should do all these riskier things. And all the best coaches on all the best teams, they never do these things. Very much what Glenn was saying, it's a culture that of a gotcha mentality. When you start, very much what Larry was saying, when you allow failing fast, and failing is part of the culture, as long as, hey guys, we're going to make mistakes, but we're going to fix them really fast, then you start seeing the leaders. So stop acting like mistakes are this absolutely atrocious thing, and you need to crucify anyone who makes a misstep, because now you're training people to not reach for the bananas. Oh my goodness, he's going for the bananas, let's beat him up. So encourage people to make calculated risks, and really, and also building teams. So instead of having everyone beat each other out, have each other, stand on each other's shoulders. Here, I'll support you, and you bring down the bananas, and all of us can eat.
We're working with a company right now, and they just spent over $1 million modernizing an application. And it's a company that's in the manufacturing world and that kind of thing. So I go in, and the guy's got a bunch of other applications, line of business stuff. So he wants to modernize these as well. So I sat with him for a couple of hours, hearing what his things are. I go away, think about it, go back, and talk with him. And he says on our second meeting, so are you telling me that the $1 million we just spent on this modernization program is money wasted? And thought about it for a second. Was it or was it not? Does it meet his strategic plan or does it not? But I told him at the moment, no, I don't have enough information to know your business strategy. So we worked for a couple more weeks. And then yesterday we met with the gentleman and made our presentation. And the presentation is to say, we're going to carry you forward from where you are, that what you have is not broken or even bad. It just doesn't accomplish your strategy for the next 5 years completely. So instead of making what he had a bad thing, or what he had spent his money on as a bad thing, we gave him a new vision for what he could accomplish over the next 5 years. And so he came out of there with, this is great, let's go forward, let's tackle this thing. So not only is the consultant trying to help him on the technical standpoint, but is to get his eyes off of the technology, because we can do that. It's writing code. I do that all the time. It's getting this guy to look at his business and say, wow, it has potential here. And what can I do with my company from here?
Yeah. It's a difference between modernizing an enterprise and what I usually call more of like the consumerization of IT. Because it seems like it's the same thing almost, what y'all are talking about. I've got clients that want to use an Android device, an Apple device, so I've got to come up with a solution that makes sure that everybody can connect and be able to communicate. What's the difference in what y'all are talking about?
When we opened, I kind of gave a definition of what you can't find one on enterprise modernization, but the general idea is it's all of that. It's all facets of your organization.
The Internet of Things, basically.
It's not, but it's not just dealing with technology. It's dealing with personalities. It's dealing with training. It's dealing with leadership. It's dealing with changing the way we do business from every standpoint, from every view, from accounting to technology to management, and everything's in between. Yes, technology plays a big role in that, but aligning the organization organizationally and resource-wise is every bit as important, because you can throw in a mobile app and you might satisfy a customer here, but if you don't have the right team to support it, maintain it, and integrate it, and do all the other things that are kind of indirect result from that mobile app, then you've really done not that much. Yes, sir.
You talked about the leader having the vision, but I think part of what we're looking at is that culture that you've talked about, and that culture is everybody from the bottom up has that vision for the whole thing, but the vision for their piece of it. And one of the the example of the monkeys, I think one of the things that are holding us back is we've got this, you get paid a salary, you get paid an hourly rate, and that doesn't necessarily reward people for innovation. So if they innovate, any comments on alternative compensation means that people can get rewarded as individuals or teams for creating that value and achieving the vision?
That's great. I'll tell my tell you like I would tell my kindergartner actually. Sometimes the feeling of success ought to be reward enough. If you are successful in your endeavors, and if you make an initiative and do something, yes, getting financially compensated is great. But also getting rewarded in an internal kind of way, a satisfaction, I've done a good job kind of way. It seems like we've kind of lost that to a certain degree. How we've lost it and how we get it back, I'm not sure. But
I'll take that a little bit. I mean, there are organizations that are trying to, they try to create opportunities for people who innovate. So it may not be directly when they pay you a certain amount. There are organizations that still allow people to have personal patents on things, although that's pretty rare. I've heard of organizations that if you do well building something, they'll actually give you your own business unit to run. This one organization, Johnson & Johnson, they give you $1 million and you can go out and start your own deal, which would be kind of nice. But I think innovation is about hiring the right people, and there being the right sort of role models internally. They're actually innovating. Just having smart people who have a high-level dialogue about what you're doing, and they're always open to innovating. There's so many other aspects to it that are not about compensation. And I have found that if I'm working on a really cool project that does require innovation, I can get people to work for me pretty cheap. If I'm working on something stupid, boy, I have to pay and pay and pay. So if you have something that's really inspirational in some way, that is an innovation, I think you'll find innovators that are willing to work for you, and they're more competent people.
I'm going to buck that trend a little bit. Compensation matters. Being a guy who just had one of our developers poached away, he loved our product. They were paying him 3 times as much. That's, great companies treat their employees extremely well, and they develop cultures where employees are rewarded. There was a great study that was done recently, and basically the gist of it was 80% felt that the majority of their work was not important. So starting right there, giving people important tasks is a big first step, but absolutely compensation matters. Rewards matter. That's why you see a lot of the top performers, a lot of sales positions. You look at sports and athletes, there's bonuses. There's ways to give them a piece. There's a way to say thank you. And sometimes all of the reward that someone needs is credit. We've all had bosses who steal all of your ideas and say they're theirs. That's a terrible idea. Give as much credit, and credit is free. Our whole military system was based off of the Napoleonic method of rewarding medals, because he noticed, giving someone a trinket will make them do this absolutely tremendous act of bravery, because you're saying, thank you, we want to encourage this.
Yeah, we got the signal and we got to wrap things up. We're going to hang out here. If anybody wants to stay afterwards and chat or ask additional questions, I know everyone's on the time lunch schedule, but thank you all very, very much.